Imagine it is 2 o'clock in the morning. The world around you is pitch black, silent, and hauntingly cold. You are driving alone on a deserted highway that feels like it's leading to the edge of the world. On either side, there is nothing but endless, skeletal trees and fields that swallow the beam of your headlights. Suddenly, the steering wheel jerks. Your car skids on a patch of black ice or loose gravel. Within seconds, you find yourself stuck in a ditch, tilted at an awkward angle, miles away from the nearest town. You aren't hurt, but the isolation is immediate and heavy. Naturally, you pick up your phone. You call the one person you trust more than anyone, your father. You stay on the line with him, describing the darkness, telling him you can see faint, glowing lights in the distance that must be the town of Linden. You promise him you'll be home soon, that you'll just walk toward those lights and meet him there. But then, in the middle of a sentence, your voice changes. You gasp. You say 2 words that chill your father to the bone, and then the line goes dead. This isn't the plot of a fictional horror movie designed to keep you awake at night. This is the terrifying, documented reality of Brandon Swanson, a young man who vanished into thin air while on a phone call. His case remains one of the most baffling and haunting missing persons mysteries in history. The story begins on May 14th, 2008. David, or Brandon, as he was known, was 24 years old. He was a young man full of ambition, known by his friends and family as someone who was reliable, level-headed, and not prone to panic. He was driving home from a small gathering at a friend's house in a nearby town. He knew these back roads. He had driven them dozens of times. But that night, the weather was working against him. A thick, rolling fog had settled over the Minnesota countryside, and the familiar landmarks he usually relied on, the red barns, the specific curves in the road, seemed to dissolve into the shadows. At approximately 1:30 a.m., David's car left the road. It wasn't a violent high-speed crash. He simply lost traction on the slippery surface and slid into a shallow, muddy embankment. He tried to reverse, shifting gears and pressing the gas, but the tires only spun deeper into the cold earth. Realizing he was hopelessly stuck, he pulled out his cell phone. He called his parents' house. His father answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep, but instantly turning into sharp concern when he heard his son was stranded. David explained the situation with surprising calmness. He told his father he wasn't injured, just frustrated with his own driving. He looked out into the darkness and told his father he could see the glowing yellow lights of a town nearby, a place he was certain was Linden. He told his father he would start walking toward those lights to save time, and they should meet him at a local gas station there. For the next 47 minutes, the two of them stayed on the phone together. Imagine that 47-minute conversation. It was mundane, almost boring. They talked about the cost of a tow truck, the cold spring wind, and their plans for the upcoming week. David's father could hear the steady, rhythmic crunch of his son's footsteps on the gravel road. He could hear the wind whistling through the phone's microphone. He could hear David's steady breathing. It felt like a normal night, a small inconvenience that would soon be over. But as the minutes ticked by, the atmosphere of the call began to shift. David started to sound increasingly confused. He told his father he was taking a shortcut through a field. He mentioned crossing a fence, but his father, who knew the geography of the Linden area, was puzzled. There were no fences like that on the path to town. Then, David mentioned he was walking through a small stream of water. He complained that his shoes were getting wet. This made no sense at all. The route to Linden was flat, dry farmland. His father's heart began to race. He asked David if he was absolutely sure where he was. David insisted he was fine, but his voice was becoming tighter, higher in pitch, and more anxious. He started describing things that didn't exist in that part of the county. Then came the moment that would haunt David's father for every waking hour of the rest of his life. David suddenly stopped talking. His father heard the footsteps stop abruptly. There was a brief, heavy silence. A silence so thick you could almost feel it through the phone line. And then David whispered just 2 words. "Oh no." There was no scream. There was no sound of a struggle or a splash. Just those 2 words, spoken with a sense of sudden realization-filled dread. It was the sound of a man seeing something he didn't expect, or realizing he was in a danger he couldn't escape. And then the call cut off with a sharp click. David's father called back instantly. His thumb hit the redial button before he even realized what had happened. He called 10 times, 20 times, 50 times. Each time, the phone rang out into the empty night until it hit voicemail. By 4 a.m., the police were involved. They tracked David's car easily, using his initial description. It was exactly where he said it was. Stuck in the mud, unlocked, with his keys still in the ignition and his jacket still inside. But here is where the mystery turns from a tragic accident into an impossible puzzle. When the police pinged David's cell phone tower records, they discovered a shocking truth. David wasn't anywhere near the town of Linden. He was actually 25 miles away in the complete opposite direction. He had been walking into the heart of a massive, treacherous river valley and dense marshland, thinking all along that he was heading towards safety. The lights he thought he saw in the distance might have been the moon, reflecting off the dark river water, or perhaps they were something far more mysterious. For the next 2 weeks, the state witnessed one of the largest search efforts in its history. Search and rescue teams, professional bloodhounds, heat-seeking drones, and hundreds of local volunteers combed every square inch of that marsh. They searched the Yellow Medicine River. They hacked through thickets, and they pried open the doors of every abandoned barn in the county. They found absolutely nothing. Not a single footprint in the soft mud. Not a drop of blood on the thorns. Not even the cell phone that had been active and transmitting signals just hours before. It was as if the earth itself had simply opened up and swallowed him whole the very second he said those final words. Years have passed since that night in May. The case remains officially open, but the trail has gone cold. Investigators have looked into every scientific possibility. Did he fall into the river and drown? If he did, the current in that area was slow. His body should have eventually surfaced or washed ashore. Thousands of man-hours were spent searching the water, but the river gave up no secrets. Did he suffer from a sudden onset of hypothermia? Even in May, the nights can be freezing. When the body gets dangerously cold, the brain can malfunction, leading to paradoxical undressing, where the victim feels hot and strips off their clothes, or terminal burrowing, where they hide in small, tight spaces. But if this happened, where were his clothes? Where was the body? Search dogs are trained to find even the smallest scent of human remains, but they found nothing but silence. Then there is the theory that people only whisper in the dark. Did David encounter someone else in that lonely, desolate marsh? Was there a silent predator waiting in the shadows? Someone who saw a lone man wandering with a glowing phone and decided to act. If someone snatched him, they did it with surgical precision. There was no sound of a fight, no shouting for help, just a quiet realization of, oh no, The mystery of the man who vanished after a phone call is a chilling reminder of the limits of our modern world. We live in an age where we think we are always connected, always reachable, and always safe as long as we have a signal in our pocket. But for David, that signal was nothing more than a witness to his disappearance. It was a bridge between two worlds that collapsed in an instant. Every night, that stretch of the river valley remains dark. The marsh remains silent, guarded by the shadows of the trees. And somewhere out there, a cell phone lies buried deep in the mud, its battery long dead, holding the only record of what David saw in his final moments. Was it an accident? Was it a person? Or was it something that defies our understanding of reality? We may never have the answers, but one thing is certain. When you are alone in the dark, and you think you see lights in the distance, be very careful about what you walk toward, because sometimes the person on the other end of the line is the only one who will ever know you were there, right before you vanished forever.